Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of MTD North America. Today, I'm with my good friend John, and John is the owner of some really great processing software, and we'll go into detail about what kind of processing software in just a moment. But he's the owner of some really great processing software called TAMS. Now, there's a lot of machining analytics softwares out there, right, John?
Yep, absolutely.
But you consider yourselves a bit unique and actually label yourself as something different.
Yeah, so for us, it's about the process and the parts. We do machine monitoring. We're pulling data off equipment, but we're relating it to the tools, the processes, the parts, relating it to things that make sense to machinists, programmers, engineers, and using the data to actually improve the process versus just give you general metrics about your shop. It's more about analyzing and providing insight into exactly where in a process you could improve, where you get the biggest bang for your buck, and that's what we're about.
And that's really the difference between the type of monitoring that you do versus the standard machine monitoring that we see out there a lot right now, right?
Right. Yeah, so for the shops that we're in, all of the data from your equipment matters, but ultimately, if you can't relate it to what that process is, what that part is, what the material is, then it's really difficult to tell whether you're doing good that day or doing bad. Once you understand what that process is and you relate the data to that, that's when you really could start improving. Your engineers could start looking at the data and actually taking action on it. The way we look at the data is a lot more actionable, I think.
And I would agree with that. Now, guys, I've had the great pleasure to talk with John and learn a bit more about how TAMS actually works. So process monitoring, I think, is a great definition of what you guys do versus machine monitoring. But let's talk about the unique benefits that you guys go into that not a lot of other people do. And that goes into the tooling and the programming and actually reading what's going on within the system itself, which I think is brilliant. But let's convey that message a little bit to our audience here so they understand what TAMS is all about.
Yeah, so obviously we connect your equipment, but we also connect all those other disparate systems in your environment because, as this machine's running, there's a lot of information that's also important. Like, what is this tool that's running? Is it an end mill? Is it a threading tool? What is that tool in that process? And we take that data, and after you run the part one time, we could look at it and give engineers some insight into where in a process is most inefficient. And where you should attack that process to start actually making improvements. It's a lot more collaborative approach because you could start talking to the machinist about specific tools, specific features on a part. It's not about, hey, why'd you only run at 40% today? It's about, hey, what part of this is a tool in the process that's really inefficient. How do we make improvements together? How do we collaborate on redesigning this process? And machinists have a lot of good recommendations once they talk to the engineers, the programmers, and they start collaborating on the information. It's powerful.
I agree, and you're the expert on this. So I always like to let our viewers know, hey, well, if we're just starting out, here's some information that might be beneficial to you, and if you're already an expert with some sort of type of monitoring system, then maybe you already understand what's going on. But I find it fascinating that TAMS is able to take every individual tool, and let's say that we have a 21-hour program. We can look at each tool and say, well, this tool can actually be sped up by 4 hours, and this one can be sped up by 3 hours, and you know exactly where you should focus your attention and time to creating a better efficiency for that machine and for that specific program.
Yeah, so our goal with the information that we're getting is for an engineer to come in the morning, look at yesterday, last week, and have a sequence of events they should go through, and parts of processes and specific areas of processes they should start attacking and start communicating with people on. There's a lot of people in the environment that need to talk more. We're trying to break down those silos with the data, use it for something, and start collaborating and talking about it and start improving your efficiency in a more sustainable way than just telling people to run faster. It's about let's attack the process, work together on improving in a sustainable way so that it doesn't matter who's running that machine tomorrow because you redesigned something the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, I agree. This isn't a track meet. We're not
Right.
all just trying to work as hard as we can, as
Right.
fast as we can, without figuring out what details we need to fix,
Yep.
which is what TAMS is really good at. Now, talking with you earlier, you have some really great projects and companies that you partner with right now.
Yep.
And these industries are a lot of defense and aerospace type stuff. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more about where you see the benefit of TAMS software helping the customers and the viewers that are watching right now?
Yeah, so our focus has been the complex environments. I mean, aerospace defense, that's our bread and butter, power generation, things like that. Because those environments, I mean, 21-hour run times. I mean, that's a significant amount of time to run a process, and if you could really start breaking that down into the key areas of where you need to improve, it's easier for everyone to do better next time, obviously, and to save a lot of money.
So John, when we're looking at parts, we're looking at, sometimes $250,000 parts, and if we scrap one of those, not only have we lost that 21 hours that we've somewhat referred to already, but we're losing a ton of money, and a process like this allows us to really fine-tune whether we're running 5 parts, 10 parts, 20 parts, really fine-tune this process, and not just for that moment, but if that job comes back in the future, you know exactly how to machine it moving forward.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously this equipment costs a lot of money to run, right? The hourly rates on some of this equipment, especially in aerospace defense, the Sterig equipment, high-end machines, they're running expensive parts, and making sure that when that part goes on the machine, it's been optimized from the get-go, right? Understanding how you performed on parts in the past and how you processed them and where your inefficiencies were, it's critical, right? And if you have similar parts that you're running today that are similar to something you ran 3 weeks ago, you should learn from it. You don't want to reinvent the wheel.
And what data is actually being taken from the machine to give you all of that information for your customers?
Yeah, so from this equipment, I mean, in the environments we deploy in and our customers, every piece of data is important because ultimately you don't know what's important or what you need until you need it. And if you weren't pulling that data at the time, then unfortunately, you can't tell the story that you need to tell. For us, G-code, axis position, spindle load, temperatures, all that data, but the tool information is critical too. So the tool, the program, all of that information is critical for us to analyze, the process and tell people where they could start improving.
Yeah, I like that statement you made. I say it a little bit different, and I say it all the time. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
We assume so often that we have been writing programs in our CAD software for X amount of years, and we understand how we're going to machine something best. But process monitoring, like you guys do, allows us to give us the continued insight we need to really fine-tune these expensive parts on these expensive machines that are, these really high quality, tight tolerance parts. That's what TAMS does, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The tools are important, the process, I mean, obviously, but ultimately when you run that part, the machinist is on the front lines, right? And a lot of times you might think that you programmed it efficiently, but the machinist has to deal with a lot more issues than he was expecting. And when we're showing the story with the data, it hits people in the mouth, when you see, an inefficiency in like a specific part of a process that has 25 tools, and there's always a story behind those inefficiencies. And it's always, well, the tool didn't actually run efficient. There was something else going on, and that part of the story needs to be told. And that's where, when you could look at the data, get some insight, and understand where to start asking questions. And the most important part is talking to the guy in the front lines, the machinist, about the specific parts of a process, because he can give you a lot more insight into what was actually happening and why there are inefficiencies. And for us, like, the collaboration is critical too. So having that conversation with the machinist about a specific tool in a process that's inefficient is a different conversation than saying, hey, like, why did you run 40% yesterday? Well, I ran 40%. You come try to run this machine, like, I'm sure you wouldn't run at 40%. but it's a different conversation if an engineer comes down and talks to the machinist about something that is relevant to a process, and he's asking specific questions about an area that he was obviously struggling with, and the machinist wants to tell his story, and it's important to tell that story because that's where there's always a but, right? You know, the tool ran, but the tool ran efficient, but, well, it's the but that we're trying to get out of the process, eliminate the but, so that that machine could run that process efficiently.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it, John. And guys, I had the great privilege of learning from John about this software. And something that sticks out in my mind was we looked at this program, and it was 21 hours, and it had the opportunity to reduce that program by 12 hours. And not only did it say, hey, by the way, you could probably reduce this by 12 hours, so you're looking at more than a 50% rate of increase in that cycle time, but it pinpointed, okay, we have 30 tools that are running right now, and it pinpointed the top 2 or 3 tools where 90% of that 12-hour cycle time could be reduced, and that was what was so important, because we're not wasting time on that whole program anymore. We are focused on those 3 tools, which then will take that 12 hours maybe down to 10 or 11 hours, and we forget about the other tools, at least for the moment, because we want to focus where time and money matter.
Yeah, so as a tooling engineer in an aerospace shop, I mean, the reason we designed the software this way was so that you could start looking at information that's relevant to you, right? Looking at the tools in the process and understanding where your inefficiencies are, and then having a conversation about those specific areas that you're going to get the most improvement. That's the best way to improve your metrics. You know, at the end of the day, making processes more efficient is the most sustainable way for a company to continue to improve.
I agree. And then once you've collected that data, which is ongoing and live and constant week after week, and when we decide what area we want to focus on, you make communication within that software to different engineers and different departments really easy as well, correct?
Yeah, so a big part of our system is about content and knowledge. So a big part of the software is the knowledge base and these digital threads where you could start collaborating with people on how to improve. So in our reporting engine, when we generate a report and we provide some valuable insight, there's always a button to say, hey, let me submit an improvement request on something very specific, some very specific valuable insight that the report provided, and put a team together on, with engineers and programmers and machinists and start talking about how to make those improvements. And then put all of the content relevant to that process into the same place so everyone's looking at the same information. And that report that gave me insight into the process is available to all of the people that are also on that improvement team.
Right.
And then ultimately that becomes the knowledge base of the company. So we tie all that information to the part, and you can search a part in our system and get the knowledge base of the company because it's tied to all of the improvement requests and all of the processes we went through to make improvements. And that's a big part of the system as well.
I agree. And, we've talked a lot about the style of machines and the cost of parts and the cost of downtime. So it's very obvious to me that TAMS is a quality product. And just to kind of go into that a bit further, we're actually in the Starreg lab right now. We're standing in front of a Bumotech Starreg machine. Starreg is known as some of the highest quality on the planet, right? We know that this 8-axis machine right here can do a one-and-done part from blank to finish, put it right into shipping. If you're working with these guys, if we're in the lab right now for Starreg, firstly, if you already have a TAMS software, you know the quality of TAMS. But if you do not, you instantly have a partner and a friendship that backs TAMS and who you guys are.
Yeah, so we have a very close partnership with Starreg, primarily because of our software is the right software for the environments that they're in, and their customers need a different solution and something that doesn't just monitor the equipment. It actually allows their engineers to actually do something with the information and take action on it and make improvements. And the partnership with Starreg has been great for us. And obviously they have the best equipment out there. So.
Oh, John, you are wise, way beyond your years, far smarter than I am. This software is extremely clever, and I really appreciate you sharing your story and wisdom with MTD. If someone wants to find out more about TAMS and contact you or your team, how would they find you? Website, social media, anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. They can visit our website, tams.ai, so tams.ai, or us on social media, LinkedIn, we're on there as well. Yeah, just reach out, and we'd love to show you what we do, show you our software, have a conversation about where we would fit at your shop and how we could help.
Well, before I let you go and let you get back to your regularly scheduled program, I have one more question for you that I'm sure the viewers are interested in, and that's your service. So once they do contact you, let's talk a little bit about service. Are you going to walk them through how the software works? How long does service last? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so for us, the most important thing is customer success, right? So a lot of IoT projects, unless people are looking at the information and taking action on it, they're not going to get as much value as they need to out of it. A big part of us is, hey, once a week we have a meeting with our customer. We discuss the product, discuss the parts of the product they're using, they're interested in, and how it fits into their environment. And we try to help them along the way, at least for the first year. That's critical that first year they start understanding how to use the information, use the data, and have that conversation. So,
well, it sounds like the service is, very. If you're going to talk with someone weekly, kind of a thing, and you're talking about the first year, honestly, I should probably know how to run it after the first year, and that makes sense to me, right? But for you to be there every step along the way, I think is important and significant for people to understand for anything that's new. And the fact that you're along with them on that journey is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the only way. For us to be successful, our customer has to be successful, obviously. So, any deployment we do, it has to be successful for us. I mean, that's the most critical thing, is having that conversation every week, understanding what their needs are. We take action. Our product is developed based on our customer feedback. So these customer success meetings are incredibly valuable for our development team. And making sure the customer understands how to use the information, that's how we're all successful.
Well, I believe TAMS is a valuable asset to our industry as a whole. I really, again, just to reiterate, appreciate you being here, sharing your story. Guys, you know where to find TAMS. John, thanks again for being a part of MTD North America.
Thanks for your time. Thank you for having me.